Brownie, if you would like to say a couple words. Thank you so much for your attention.
I wanted to just say a couple things. First of all, the red bandana is the one I got on the March for Blair Mountain, and I thought I'd wear it for you. Let me join Susan and Bowdoin in thanking you, Chuck, for coming all the way from West Virginia to talk with us. And Chuck will be meeting with classes here at Bowdoin tomorrow. When Henry Hayburn, my friend and colleague, and I left the March on Blair Mountain last mid-June, I resolved that if there's any way possible to bring Chuck to Maine to talk about the courageous people from his great-grandfather Frank and before down to his generation and beyond, that I would try to do that. And I also want to thank Craig McEwen, I think is in the audience tonight, and Janice Jaffe, who's the Deputy Director of the McKean Center for Common Good, for making it possible for Chuck to come. He did ask for one thing in exchange for coming. He asked for some good fresh Maine lobster, so we're going to take care of that tomorrow before he flies back to West Virginia. As you know, many of you know from my career at the Natural Resources Council of Maine, it does my heart good to see a room full of activists, a room full of people who care deeply about human dignity and the fate of this earth. I have never met people who cared more deeply than the people I met on the March for Blair Mountain. They are truly rock solid in their commitment. But as Chuck said, they cannot do it alone. We have some tools here in Maine. We have members of Congress. We have the ability to write letters to the editor, to talk to our members of Congress. We have a Clean Air Act that is under assault in the United States Congress now. We need to persuade our members not to mess with it and to defend it. We have a new set of EPA regulations to much more stringently control carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions from coal-fired power plants. They are going to be under attack. In fact, they already are. We can write to the EPA and stress to our members of Congress that those new standards are critical to protect the lungs of our families and our children, and also to clamp down on old, dirty coal-fired power plants that are taking their coal from mountaintop removal and other places. That's really what I wanted to say. One, thank you, Chuck. Two, thank you, Bowdoin. And three, thanks to all of you for coming tonight. Please be activists and follow through on this so that we can protect Maine and West Virginia, Appalachia, and our planet. And one last thing, if anybody would like to come to the Lion's Pride out on Pleasant Street, they have promised to do nibbles and some good Maine fruit. And so that's where I'm going to take Chuck, and I hope as many of you who can will join us. Thanks so much. Work in progress, and a very late session bill to pave the way for open pit mining in Maine is under discussion in Augusta, and the whole environmental community is working very hard to protect the current environmental provisions in the law, wetlands, streams, groundwater, drinking water, etc. And that's a work in progress. So there wasn't anything we could really say about that tonight. I think the more direct connection for Maine people is to stop mountaintop removal by letting our elected officials, particularly our two members of the Senate and Congress, know that Maine people don't want coal from mountaintop removal sites here, and that we think it ought to be stopped altogether. It would take a stroke of a pen to fix the Clean Water Act so that mountaintop removal was no longer allowed, that it was no longer lawful. If they revoked the provision that allows the dumping of spoils, rocks and debris, and the chemicals from explosives into rivers and streams in Appalachia, we'd stop mountaintop removal.
So go big, hit it national.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But also a very real connection to what is being considered in the state of Maine with all of the horrific impacts right there.
That's absolutely right. I mean, Irving the largest private landowner in the state of Maine, is behind this effort to try to weaken Maine's fabric of environmental laws in order to pave the way for open pit mining. And I've actually been doing a little bit of work on that myself, but the whole environmental community is involved in trying to stop any weakening of current laws. And if that means killing altogether the Irving proposal, then we'll try to do that. If it means amending or changing it so that it doesn't got any current standards, then we'll do whatever is necessary.
The fight is on, more will be revealed.
The fight is on in the legislature right now, and will probably go right to the last hour, I would guess, of the legislature.
So my last question, again, realizing we need to go, but what specific to the main issue would you recommend citizens do, realizing that we need more information? I know the National Resource Council has a lot of
Right. The plain and simple message is for people to talk to, email, call their legislators and say we should absolutely not weaken Maine's air quality laws, surface water, that is river and stream protection laws, or groundwater, drinking water laws in any way, shape, or form to make it easier to do open pit mining in this state, period.
Read it another time.
All right.
Okay?
I'm sorry, just for purposes of, I think I lost the first 10 seconds of your introduction, could you tell us who you are?
Yeah, my name is Chuck Keeney. I'm a history professor from West Virginia. I have a PhD with specializations in Appalachian history. And I'm the great-grandson of Frank Keeney, who was president of the United Mine Workers in West Virginia and one of the leaders in the coal mining wars.
Now, I threw you a kind of an intentional fluff question about people in the modern times being marginalized, having identified myself as Occupy. And didn't know if you had anything more to say related to that. I mean, do you feel like the message of Occupy resonates with the kind of stuff you're talking about here?
It does, and even some people that were on the march have gone on to be involved in the Occupy movement. Occupy Oakland, for example, I know. And yes, because if you want to put it in the terms of the Occupy movement, Blair Mountain is the history of the 99%. That's what it is. And it's the 1% that has prevented this history from being told. So, and if you want more people to understand about economic injustice, about how a system of control can keep a region and even a country in poverty, and how that can cause poverty, then it's very relevant to what the Occupy movement is involved in, to the kind of stands that they're making. In Wall Street, I mean, it is, Central Appalachia is a place that over 70% of the land is absentee owned. And it's people who are far away making decisions that mire a region in poverty. And isn't that something about the Wall Street, what happened in 2008, people that were far removed from everyday life making decisions that affect millions of people and prevent people from living up to their own potential and being able to partake in what a good democracy should be able to offer.
And the marginalization continues. They may not have called us rednecks yet, but we're homeless and bums and get a job. And
Of course, of course. You stereotype and you don't see them as individuals. And as people, yeah. And when you stereotype, yes, it's the first step.
Yeah. So my last question, and again, thank you. I know it's been a long day, I'm sure. And it sounds like it's going to be a long one tomorrow. Relative, I was asking Brownie Carson about how this relates in Maine with, as you may know, this mountaintop removal legislation moving through the legislature.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought it was intentional that you were up here at this time, but is it really more of a coincidence? Or?
It's more of a coincidence simply because this was scheduled a few months back.
Okay.
And I go around the state a lot and give talks at colleges around the state, and this was my free weekend.
So it's right on time.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
So all the horrifying things that you've shared with that terrible picture of the water, we're looking at that up here.
Yes, that's potentially, and I don't know the dynamics with how they're going to do things and the specifics of the law, but yes, that's potentially what you're looking at. And once the ball gets rolling, so to speak, it's very tough to stop.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your help in helping us to understand that more.
Well, thank you for having me and for everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Lots of